This podcast is brought to you by iPlayHockey.ca. iPlay is the leading hockey insurance provider to coaches, camp instructors, spring and summer hockey leagues, and tournaments across Canada. If you need insurance for hockey, iPlay has you covered. iPlay also provides hockey players and coaches with a wide range of free tools, drills, and skills in their drill vault to enhance on-ice performance, and they provide crucial off-ice knowledge as well. So if you need insurance for a hockey team, league, or camp, or if you just want to teach your kids some new drills, head on over to iPlayHockey.ca and check out their new website.
How we doing, everybody? Welcome to episode 255 of the Boys in the Booth podcast. Cody Abrams and Melbourne with you for this one. Hope you enjoyed our last episode with Julian McKenzie, Senators beat writer of The Athletic and the host of The Chris Johnston Show. You can find that episode on wherever you get your podcasts. Just like this one, episode 255, we'll kick it off with Core 4 stories. Here we go.
Core 4.
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 All right, fellas, in this edition of Core 4 Stories, we will start off with some very sad news this week in the hockey world. The passing of Larry Brooks at the age of 75 after a short battle with cancer. Covered hockey and the New York Rangers for nearly 4 decades at the New York Post. Obviously, when the name Larry Brooks comes up, you immediately think of the exchange with John Tortorella and that famous video of Tortorella basically telling him to get lost verbatim. So, just a thought or two on Larry Brooks, obviously a legend in the business, and who passes away at 75.
Yeah, it's certainly sad news and a bit of an icon in his own way. And it's amazing to see kind of how many lives you can touch as being a journalist in the world. Like, I'm sure a lot of coaches and people like that can get frustrated with the media at times, but it seemed like a lot of the coaches had good things to say about him, and we're always passing their condolences and spoke highly of him. So it's that's good to see in the hockey world.
Yeah, definitely a sad day to hear of his passing. Covering the Rangers for that long, writing about them, and being in the mix of the post game and pre game scrums and all of that, having those interactions with coaches like Tortorella. That's the first one you think of. Yeah, it's a sad day for hockey. I listened to the conversation on the most recent 32 Thoughts episode about Larry Brooks and his legacy and kind of what he meant to hockey. And it's easy to forget how important these writers used to be, and to a lesser degree still are in the game, because go back 20 years before social media, and these were the people that you got your news stories from. They shaped the way you thought about the game, right? There was no Instagram or TikTok to go and catch a highlight here or hear a take there from a podcast, right? It was these guys in the trenches getting the information and putting it out to the fans. Like, it's a really tough profession to do, and Larry Brooks did it for a long time. And cancer is a terrible thing. His battle was brief. It's a sad day for the hockey world today, but overall, legend Larry Brooks was.
Yeah, well said. And I will just add as well that there were many great tributes to Larry Brooks, but I thought that the one from John Tortorella in particular was terrific. It was really well said. And, this was on the latest 32 Thoughts as well, Chad, as you referred to. And Torts, what he said was basically like, no matter what kind of exchange we had or battle the day before, Larry was right back the next day to ask the questions. And that is something that definitely sticks with everybody and people in the business trying to work their way up as they continue on and remember the legacy of Larry Brooks. So not an easy transition from that, but we'll move along here. Brad Marchand hits 1,000 points in his career. He did that earlier in the week, and I feel like this is starting to become the Brad Marchand segment to start the podcast. He's come up in a few of these at the start of the season here, but obviously a very big milestone for one of the players who is just carrying the Panthers into the fight every single night. At 37 years old, Brad Marchand is, with a couple of key guys out of the lineup.
It's funny. I think that this is one of the main reasons why people hate him so much is the guy has 1,000 points. He doesn't need to be doing the antics, but he just still does it. Like I can hear, family members and friends. I can just hear their voices in my head. Like, he doesn't even need to do this. He's a good player. So I think it's the thing that makes him extra frustrating. He isn't just like a Matt Cook or someone like that. He's out here pissing people off and putting up 1,000 points. And I kind of love him for it now.
Yeah, it's awesome. The longevity, the pure longevity of the antics is incredible. Yeah. Like right from entering the league up until now at, into his late 30s. So it's incredible to watch. Similar to a guy like Corey Perry, who, by the way, is off to an incredible start scoring this season, which is insane. So you've got the worm and the rat. I think you could call them both cockroaches instead, because they just won't die. They just won't go away, and their antics continue. So good for Brad for 1,000 points. Hate the guy, but respect him deeply.
Totally. All right. A couple of more items here for Core 4 stories, and shocker, they're about contracts. And we'll start with Shane Pinto, $7.5 million times 4 years. Julian kind of hit the nail on the head last week when we asked him about, the latest goings on in the Pinto contract negotiations. He re-ups for 4 more years. Again, $7.5 million is the average annual value. He's had a terrific start to the season on a Senators team trying to make the playoffs for the second year in a row. As you can see, 9 goals, 15 points in 19 games. Thoughts on the deal, gentlemen?
I think that's a great deal. And you guys mentioned it on the podcast last week with Julian McKenzie. You talked about it for a while. It was a good part of the segment. But I look at the start of his season, kind of where he ended off last season and kind of where it's going. He's getting more ice time finally. He's not really that third line player anymore. It kind of looks like he's being leaned on a little bit, more frequently and certainly on the power play. So I mean, if he ends up being that 70-point player, 7 and change is going to be an absolute steal, especially the way contracts are being dished out right now. So I think the Ottawa Senators did a really good job here.
Yeah, I do too. And you guys are right. Julian kind of hit it on the head last week when we were talking about this. Didn't indicate that he was thinking that Pinto was going to go on a short-term deal, but did talk about, the fact that it could happen. So good for him for kind of being all over that and for predicting the AAV being comparable to a Dylan Cousins in Ottawa as well. So good for Julian for pointing those two things out. And in terms of the deal itself, like, I think it's an all right one for Ottawa. I think contracts are going kind of nuts right now. And so, when you look at it through that lens, I think it's a really good contract. But for me, I don't know. You look at the point totals, you see a career high 37 points. Obviously, he's going to blow that out of the water this season. You're kind of paying for more than just points with this guy. You're paying for his defensive acumen. He's going to be the center that matches up against, other teams' top players. So, yeah, I think at, 7.5 for the next 4 years, I think it's a good contract. I'm not going to call it a steal yet until I see the production as well. And it looks like, he's well on pace this year to put up about 70 to 80 points. And if he does that, that would be fantastic. And I'll call it a steal outright.
Yeah, and on the heels of this, Elliot Friedman said a couple of good things. Number one, I think a lot of the offers that the Senators threw at Pinto and his camp were 8-year deals. And, God knows where the the cap hit would have been if it was an 8-year contract. But I do like this, both term and dollars, with the cap going up. And he's a very good centerman, and especially when you have injuries, he has an opportunity to be right in your top 6 and contribute. This will definitely be a career year in a contract year. We see that quite a bit. I am wondering myself, like you are, Chad, whether that point production will continue. Don't expect it to continue at this current pace that he's on. But overall, I do like the deal. He's a good player for them. And then the second thing that Elliot brought up as well is that Ottawa pretty much has everyone locked up. And so it is time. It's time to go for it and take advantage of this window that they're in of, having everyone locked up long term and going for the playoffs and eventually trying to contend for a Stanley Cup. I think as a whole, organizationally, they're set up pretty nicely.
It reminds me of Montreal too, like how they have everybody locked up for the foreseeable future. So it's just kind of, it's a good bet if you're going to try to lock up all of the key, participants in your core of players there at reasonable deals. So I like the bet on a guy like Pinto, and I just shared on the screen, you guys probably saw, 5th most time on ice per game rather for the Sens this year, playing almost 20 minutes a night. So it's pretty, it tells you that he's being leaned on a lot more, Casey, like you were referring to. He's not just a third line center anymore.
BetterHelp is the paid partner of this video. The new year is a blank space for you to write a new story. BetterHelp makes it more convenient to get you started. BetterHelp is fully online, making therapy more comfortable and convenient. They carefully make sure therapists on the platform are well qualified, and their customer support team is there to help you if you have any questions. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.5 rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform you can trust. Your next chapter starts today. Get 10% off your first month of BetterHelp online therapy at betterhelp.com/boysinthebooth in paid partnership with BetterHelp. Terrific. All right. Final item, and this is a big contract, bigger than the one we just talked about, of course. Adrian Kempe, maybe the biggest name left in terms of pending unrestricted free agents. Kempe, $10.63 million is the cap hit for 8 more years with the LA Kings, who had a pretty good week and now find themselves in top spot in the Pacific Division. Thoughts on this whopper of a deal for Adrian Kempe and the Los Angeles Kings?
Yeah, it seems like a bit of a whopper, but considering how long he held out for, I kind of expected it to be north of 11 million. And I think a lot of people are shocked based off kind of point totals in the history. He's like just shy of a point per game, but last year he had 35 goals. He was great in the playoffs. He's been really good to start this season, and he's kind of the guy in LA now. And I think likely the captain in the future, maybe once Kopitar retires next season. So I think everything is pointing towards him being sort of the face here. And there's so much more that Adrian Kempe brings to the game than scoring goals. He is a penalty killer. He's a very strong defensive player, and he's kind of just all over the place. He's the most noticeable player on the ice for the LA Kings every single night. So I don't think that this contract is outrageous at all. I think I would say perfect.
Yeah, I think personally, I have to just kind of reorient myself as to like what a contract is supposed to look like based on a player's production these days. Like 10 point, what would you say it was, Harb? 6 something is the AAV?
Yeah, 10 point, I've got it right here, 10.63.
Yeah, and so like when I think about that number, like off the top, Mitch Marner was making that like 2 years ago, and he was getting 100 points and getting run out of town for it, basically. So when you look at it like that, it's like, okay, well, Adrian Kempe isn't, the same player as Mitch Marner. He's way worse. But then you start to look at the, the surrounding context of the cap going up and up over the next 3 years, at least as far as we know. And you think to yourself, okay, well, if he's the main guy offensively in LA and Kopitar's retiring and he does more than just, put up points, it starts to make a bit of sense. So I think it's an okay deal. Again, though, I just feel like I have to reorient myself to what a good deal looks like in this day and age.
You do. I mean, this is like an $8.8 million contract a few years ago,
Exactly.
The way you look at it. And you think of a guy he had 35 goals in 2021, 2022, 41 the year after that. He was on a 30 goal pace the next season. He had 35 goals last year. Goals are a premium in the league. And he is the goal scorer in LA. So I think you got to pay your guy. And the only thing I'd be a little hesitant about here is that this contract's going to take him to 38.
Yeah, that's fair. But I mean, again, like we've kind of said, if Kopitar's gone next year, which by all accounts he's retiring at the end of the year, unless something drastically changes, maybe they go to a cup final or something and he wants one more shot, who knows? But Kempe is going to be a guy who's relied on even more going forward in terms of production, in terms of a leadership role, everything. So if you're LA, you've got to lock up your guy. If this is the number that it took, fine by me.
Yeah,
and the difference between. Sorry, Harp. No, that's okay. Before we get away from Chad, because you mentioned Mitch Marner, you know what the difference is here? This is coming off of 10 points in 6 games in the playoffs, and they see him as the guy to take them to the promised land, so they got to pay him.
10 points in 6 games. Is that good in the playoffs? Is that good?
That's all right. 4 goals, 6 assists. That's
not bad.
I was just going to reiterate what you said a few minutes ago there, Case, is like this contract is kind of what, an $8 million contract looked like a couple of years ago. So, but I know what you mean, Chad. It's like we're in the new times now. We're at it's a new day and age in terms of contracts and salary cap and all of that. And, it's just going to continue. This will have a trickle down effect for guys like Alex Tuch, Nick Schmaltz in Utah, and the list goes on. So when I saw this deal, I immediately thought, okay, this is like, showing that, again, 10 million plus is the new 8 million plus.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'm sure it works out in terms of percentage of the cap too. Like, I'm sure that's an easy conversion that we can do. So, but you're right, Harp. We can't be comparing to the before times because these are the now times in the new salary cap era.
No, that's right. And again, I think like there are probably some managers around the league who aren't too thrilled about it, but I mean, what choice do they have? Like, they either get with the times or risk losing the player. And I think option B is not the one you want to go with. And that's the case here with a very good player on the Los Angeles Kings and a player who wanted to stay and a team that had a very good week. So all good things there. All right, that does it for Core 4 Stories for episode 255 to kick it off. And we are now going to talk about coaches on the hot seat. Either currently we think they're on the hot seat, or they could be trending towards being on the hot seat. So, Case, why don't you start us off?
Yeah. No, that's probably good because I want to go ahead and take an obvious one so that I can then just sit back, nestle in, and let Chad vent about the Leafs for a while. So,
hey, how do you know I'm picking Craig Berube? You don't know that.
I'm pretty sure you sent a text, start the lottery or plan the lottery yesterday. So it just gave me a bit of a hunch. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that Andrew Brunette might have 2 to 3 weeks left in Nashville. He mentioned in interviews at the start of this season that he knows he's going in on the hot seat. he even commented on how the NHL coaching lifespan is around 2.5 years. It's actually 2.2 to 2.3 years. And we are coming up to that for Brunett's time in Nashville. So back in 2021, 2022, he came in midseason in Florida and drove that team to a record of 51, 18, and 6. And a second round loss. Then he joined Nashville as associate coach, where I kind of wanted him to stay and take over from Lindy. But ultimately, he landed in Nashville as the head coach in 2023, 2024. And then they went 47, 30, and 5 in a season, his first season, which I would say most people, and including us, expected for a rebuild to start in Nashville. And he took them to the playoffs. They ended up losing in the first round, and that was it. And then that season gave them the confidence to spend $100 million in the offseason to bring in Stammer, Marchessault, Shea, and others, which led to them touting a record of 30, 44, and 8, missing the playoffs, which is not a good look. And we thought, okay, this is the time to turn it around. Well, this season started out even worse. Their record is 6-10-4. They have the worst goal differential at minus 22. Their power play, which is the only thing they had going for them last year, has been painfully mediocre. And they continue from last season to be the worst 5-on-5 team in the league. I expect that they're going to start looking for a scapegoat here very soon. It's not going to be Barry Trotz, who they love in Nashville. And it won't be those star players they brought in. So it's always going to be the head coach. And it happens to be 2.3 years in Nashville.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good one to bring up, Case. I think, when preparing for this episode and looking for, coaches who may be on the hot seat, you instantly just, try to find teams who are in the standings underperforming, compared to where we thought they were going to be. And Nashville is certainly one of those teams. For me, my only question, kind of in response to you as having coaching as being the issue here, I just wonder if it's team construction. And I wonder if maybe Barry Trotz shares some of that blame for, being obviously a renowned coach, but as a GM, hasn't really got it done for me and has made some kind of perplexing moves here. So yeah, we'll see what happens in Nashville. I could definitely see Burnett being on the hot seat, but I also just think that Trotz should be sharing some of the blame too.
I wonder what this team would look like right now if that first season when Burnett came in, if they missed the playoffs. I don't think that they would have spent as hard as they did. And there's a number of things kind of around that season. I think they announced big plans on spending like $600 million or something ridiculous on their rink and upping that. And, when you're making that sort of investment, you're coming off a good season, you have to spend and you have to bring in players. Those were the three big fish in that offseason. So I don't know if you can blame Trotz necessarily for bringing in the three big fish. You have to imagine that adding guys like that, that's going to be huge for them. So I think ultimately they love Barry Trotz in Nashville from his time there coaching. It was kind of a big deal when he took over, and I don't think that they're going to throw him under the bus as soon as they will a coach, and it's always the coach. And I don't really think that I'm sitting here blaming Andrew Burnett. I think he's a great coach. I wanted him to stay in New Jersey. Ultimately, Sheldon Keefe, I'm happy with that. But I think Burnett's a good coach. There hasn't been a good product on the ice in Nashville. The fact that 5-on-5 has been so poor just kind of screams the coach. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to be good at 5-on-5, or 5-on-5. Being good at 5-on-5 is going to put you, in a playoff spot. Having a great power play is going to put you to the top of the league. So, or great special teams. If none of that's working, then the coach is going to get axed pretty quick.
Yeah, I almost wonder if they fire Burnett, bring someone else in, and that's kind of the last lever to pull on this team. and then play it out until the trade deadline. And if they can't figure it out by the trade deadline, that's when you start selling players. Whether it's one of those new guys who were signed, like you're talking about, Case, maybe it's a Stamkos, like we've mentioned in the past. Maybe it's a Marcia So, who knows? Maybe it's a Saros. Like how big of a seller will they be at the deadline? We'll have to see, but I could definitely see Burnett being on the hot seat.
Yeah, and I think they could be sellers. I just, you see things like that interview with Ryan O'Reilly being just so hard on himself, and it just kind of tells me that even, a veteran like that is mentally down in the locker room. It just, all of it seems bad in Nashville. So the one positive I'll throw out here is that I think Andrew Burnett's doing very well with the young guys in Nashville. A guy like Evangelista, who's having a great start to the season. Matthew Wood, who's been a great rookie for them so far. So it's interesting, that he's having a success with the young guys on this team. Kind of makes you think like, oh, what if they started the rebuild with Andrew Burnett? Like, would it be going well? So yeah.
Yep. No, and I mean, they were headed in that direction. David Poile did a great job, as I've mentioned before, on this podcast with that, and then they go on a big run, get into the playoffs, like you mentioned, Case, and then go out and spend $100 million trying to push the the speed up button on this thing, and it's proving to be a bad move again for the second year in a row. No one expected anything out of this team, and their record proves that. I agree, roster construction, Chad, is a big part of this, and that's on Barry Trotz. Burnett can only do so much with the players that he has, but also, like you mentioned, Case, at 5-on-5, they're just abysmal, and that is on the coaching. So Burnett's definitely one of the first names you think of when it comes to coaches being on the hot seat. And I just wonder, too, if they make a change, if Trotz just decides to come down to the bench himself and fill both roles.
Yeah,
we've seen that before in years past. I don't know, just wondering, but no, he's one of the first names that you think of for sure, and Andrew Burnett.
Yeah, I think from what I've gathered about Barry Trotz, he's a better coach than GM, so maybe he just hires a GM and takes over the coaching job himself. I could see that.
Maybe.
I don't want to be hard on the guy, but it just hasn't gone well in Nashville, and I just haven't agreed with a lot of the moves.
Just too much too soon, as we've said before about the Predators, and here they are, almost 20 games in. So
we interrupt this podcast to tell you about one of our favorite partners, Sign Up Expert. If you're a sports bettor, whether brand new, casual, or hardcore, listen very carefully because this ad is for you. Guys, line shopping for the best odds matters, and that's why any profitable sports bettor needs to be using multiple sports books to maximize their profits. Thankfully, there has never been a better time to get signed up, and we are here to connect you with the best promotions industry-wide. When you use our link at signupexpert.com/boysinthebooth, you can get access to all of the top sports books in your region, along with a review of each platform and its unique benefits. Most importantly, all of these sportsbooks have valuable sign-up offers for new users, and when you register through our link, you will automatically receive the top offer at each one, allowing you to start line shopping with an enhanced bankroll. Guys, it's simple. When you use multiple sportsbooks, you ensure that you can always access the best available odds, which is key to successful and profitable sports betting. So, if you want to take advantage of these incredible benefits and support our brand at the same time, please consider signing up for your next sportsbook through our link in the description below, signupexpert.com/boysinthebooth. If you're planning on signing up for a new sportsbook anyways, you might as well use our link and support the boys. So, one more time, that's signupexpert.com/boysinthebooth.
All right, Chad. Berube and the Leafs.
Yeah, how did you guys know I was going to talk about Craig Berube as a guy who is on the hot seat, or at least should be? I don't know if he actually is, because obviously he's new here. I just got here is his line, right? Like that's what he could say. But you know, I think he should be on the hot seat because I'm not sure the Leafs have the players that Craig Berube needs to play his style or his system of hockey, and he hasn't pivoted or adapted to kind of reflect or deal with that reality. So yeah, I've got Craig Berube. The Leafs are 8-9-2 out of the gate. It's not good. The only team behind them in the Atlantic right now is the Buffalo Sabres. Sorry, Harp, not to pile on what Julian said last week as well, but yeah, they're not doing so hot either. The problem, obviously, if you guys have watched any game from the Maple Leafs this year, pick one, pick any single one, and it's the exact same product on the ice. Sure, they can score goals, but oh my God, they can't defend. And I don't know why. It just seems like everybody is so disconnected out there on the ice. It seems like the forwards are way too high in the defensive zone, and the defensemen just collapse in their own zone and they never pinch. And it's just like, it's a weird, passive, like ugly, boring system. And who else am I to blame but Craig Berube? Like, of course you can talk about personnel and maybe they're a player or two away, whether it's in the forward group or on the back end, from being a better team, or at least having guys who can play that system. But right now, guys, it's just not working. And I got news for you. It's not that big of a new thing here. It wasn't really working last year either in terms of the advanced numbers. They just had extremely good goaltending all year. And, we kind of talked ourselves into the fact that, maybe they were getting such good goaltending because they weren't giving up a ton of chances, or at least a ton of quality chances. But the more I dug into the numbers, the more I found out that this year and last year, in terms of high danger chances for and against, are eerily similar. And really the biggest difference is goaltending. And listen, there's a famous line out there. I don't know who said it first, but show me a good goalie and I'll show you a good coach, right? And I think the inverse is true too. Show me a good coach, I'll show you a good goalie. Like, it's just, if goaltending isn't going, the coach is going to get fingers pointed at him, and it might not be fair. But that's the reality right now. The fingers are starting to point at Craig Berube. They're also starting to point at Brad Treliving as well. But for me, Berube has to share in some of this blame at the horrible start for the Maple Leafs. So what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I certainly didn't expect them to have a -4 goal differential, 20 games into the season, or 19. It has looked pretty rough. And I think there was one game we were texting back and forth. I think it was the Devils Leafs game. And you're just kind of pointing out, like, effort level. It kind of seemed like it was low. The Leafs were the third guys to the puck each time, after the Devils and the refs or something. I don't know. They just... it was so slow watching them, and it just didn't work. And I can see that from your perspective of, it's not working, and it just kind of continues to just be the same effort and the same production put on the ice, same system, same coach. So I don't know if he's actually on the hot seat, but I think it's always a hot seat when you're in Toronto, from the media at least, and then the fans. And it kind of looks like every time I look down at my phone, I see some sort of comment or DM or something on our Instagram that it says Leafs suck. So it's just like, it's just, you just catch so many strays as a Leafs fan. And it's funny to be a third party to that. And I can see it. I can see that the coach should be the guy on the hot seat here in Toronto. Maybe less so in Nashville, but definitely in Toronto.
Yeah, no, let me chime in and say a couple other things here. So yeah, like I said to you guys a couple games ago, I want to say it was like maybe a week ago, I said in the group chat, guys, listen, is this a safe space? Well, I got to tell you something. I have a hockey take, and the take was, I miss Sheldon Keefe. I really do, because under Sheldon Keefe, whether it was personnel or systems, I guess we'll never really know. But those teams a couple years ago just had the puck more and felt more threatening offensively. And maybe that's unfair for me to say because, the Leafs are currently second in the NHL in scoring. But, not only did they feel more threatening offensively, they also just felt like tighter defensively and faster and just worked harder to get to pucks. Like, I don't know. The teams under Sheldon Keefe just looked a whole heck of a lot different than the teams under Craig Berube. And the only major difference, really, I mean, aside from Mitch Marner, who was here last year under Berube and had a fantastic year, the only real difference is the coaching. So I don't really know what else to make of it other than, Berube needs to figure out a different system that these guys can buy into, because whatever they're trying to do right now is not working. The next thing I'll say too is Berube has an interesting relationship with Keith Pelly, who is the CEO of MLSE. Keith Pelly talked really glowingly of Berube in a press conference at the start of this year, where it was Pelly and Berube and Treliving, and Treliving has also done this too, where they're talking about how Berube is in on some of the organizational decisions and whatnot. So I'm bringing him up as a guy who I think should be on the hot seat, but the way they talk about him, it just seems like he's almost part of the management group here. So that scares me. I said that immediately after that press conference on the podcast here. I said it scared me, that relationship they had in the first place, and the way that they were talking about him being so involved as a coach. So yeah, I don't know if he's truly on the hot seat, but I think he should be, because this has been a disastrous start. And last year was masked by really good goaltending.
This podcast is sponsored by SeatGeek, the absolute best ticket app out there. SeatGeek takes the confusion out of buying tickets, making it quick and easy to get the best deals to tickets at your favorite sporting event. SeatGeek does this awesome thing where they score each ticket out of 10 based on its value, so you know whether you're getting a good or a bad deal. Last time I got tickets to see the Devils play, I first saw red tickets. I waited it out, monitored the price in-app, and once I saw green, I pulled the trigger. SeatGeek makes it that easy. And here's the best part. SeatGeek has completely hooked us up. Boys in the Booth listeners get $20 off their first purchase on SeatGeek with the promo code BOYSINTHEBOOTH in all caps. Click the link in our description to download the app, and remember to get your discounted tickets using the code BOYSINTHEBOOTH in all caps. Get great seats for a fraction of the cost with SeatGeek.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with a lot of what you said there, Chad. I mean, yeah, you knew that a Mitch Marner-less Toronto Maple Leafs were going to look a lot different, but I didn't think it would be 8-9-2 different. But that's where we're at. Obviously, the goaltending covered up a lot of blemishes on this team last year for sure. And I just wonder if the guys are tuning the coach out a little bit at this point, just with the lack of compete. And, coming into this season, you look at this team that on paper is big and heavy and that sort of thing, hard to play against. We heard that term a lot, and they're the exact opposite. Really. And honestly, it's shocking with a team that's coached by Craig Berube. And here's the last thing I'll say about Chief is that I think he's a really good coach. I mean, obviously, he is. He won a Stanley Cup with the St. Louis Blues in 2019, turned them around, and as an interim, mind you, and won the Stanley Cup. But I think Berube has a bit of an expiration date attached to him, where I think, it's a really good first couple of years, and then things just kind of get stale. And that might be what's happening here. although it is early, you don't want to react, but it's overreact, excuse me. But it is Toronto at the same time, and so there are definitely some concerns. And I just when I thought about this and knowing that you were going to bring up Berube and the Leafs, I just one of the first things I thought about was, really good coach can come in, have a good first couple of years, but then I do think there's a bit of an expiration date attached to him, like we've seen with other coaches in the past. So that's really all I have to say on Berube. And I know that we're not talking about general managers on the hot seat, but this is something that I keep thinking about, and I wanted to mention it at some point on the podcast. Talking about Brad Treliving, you look at his history, you look at his tenure in Calgary. Well, what happened? They couldn't get over the hump against Edmonton, and losing in that second round series against the Oilers a few years ago, that really broke the Calgary Flames, and they've been trying to recover ever since. He loses a superstar player for nothing in Johnny Gaudreau, and tried to fix it with some other big signings. Well, it didn't work. And now they're saddled with just an awful contract for a guy like Jonathan Huberdeau. It's not as bad here, but it's very similar so far. They lost a superstar forward in Mitch Marner for next to nothing, trying to replace it by committee with some moves around the edges, whether it's Nick Waugh, Matthias Michelli, Dakota Joshua, the list goes on. And they're mediocre to start the season. And I just worry that history is going to prove itself again for this general manager in another market. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, all of what you're saying, I've thought about before, because it's glaringly,
of course you have.
it's obvious that Brad Treliving is kind of repeating history here in the worst way possible by, like you said, trying to replace Mitch Marner with, guys who are bigger and slower and heavy, who play that heavy style and are direct, and that's what Berube wants and whatnot. But that's kind of not the identity of the team. It never has been. I don't think it ever will be. Like, I look at a team like the Devils, right now. They look like what the Leafs looked like 5 years ago. Young, fast, hungry, like determined to just be on pucks, having fun, scoring at will, But the main difference is they're better built than the Leafs were 5 years ago because they have a better back end and solid goaltending. But I look at the forward group and it looks to me like the same as what the Leafs did 5 years ago. Fast forward now, the Leaf Stars aren't quite as fast or dynamic. They don't have Mitch Marner. He's not here anymore. And you just look at the rest of the lineup and it's just a lot of the same guy. Like, there's no other dynamic players to fit in. It's a lot of heavy, it's a lot of direct, it's a lot of slow. And that's been Berube's kind of MO. And that's why it worries me so much that he is, seemingly making decisions so closely with Brad Treliving, because that's kind of what they have both wanted from a team during their careers. And I just don't know if it's feasible to do that when the league is getting younger, the league is getting faster. Look at the top of the scoring race right now. It's Macklin Celebrini, it's Connor Bedard, it's Leo Carlsson, and then, Nate McKinnon, who's a freak mutant, but he's up there too. It's just like, I don't know if the style they're trying to play is the best way to win right now. I think they tried to copy what Florida is doing, but Florida's different. Like, all those guys on Florida, they're not necessarily big and heavy. They're just assholes to play against, and they're water bugs. Like, they have a lot of guys who just kind of buzz around. They're not the biggest guys out there, but they play bigger than they are. So all of this to say, Harp, like I see where you're coming from with the roster construction. It does worry me a little bit. They got to figure something out here, because it's not an option to miss the playoffs with, a closing window and you've still got Matthews around.
Florida
Exactly.
is relentless. That's the difference. Like,
Yeah.
they don't let you breathe ever, and it's
No.
up and down the lineup with them. I think it kind of seems more like they're trying to copy the 2018-2019 St. Louis Blues when Berube won the Cup. You look at that roster, like, I mean, I'm looking at it on paper right now, and that doesn't seem like a Stanley Cup winning team in today's standards, at least. So, but it is full of guys who, play that heavy style and kind of look like the Toronto Maple Leafs of today. So I think even then, this St. Louis Blues team is missing an Austin Matthews or a Willie Nylander. So I don't know what they're trying to do.
Yeah, me neither. And by the way, those guys are off to great starts this year. Not necessarily Matthews, but look at a guy like Nylander or John Tavares. John Tavares having a great start to the year.
Tavares is inevitable right now. Dude,
he gets the puck on his stick in the slot, and it's like, that's a goal. Do what you want, but you can't stop him. He's scoring. Like, he's a scoring machine. And by the way, he's still the captain. Like, it's just so obvious to me that he is still the captain of this team. As we wrap up on the Leafs, let me just stat dump, because I wasn't able to get to it at the start here. Talking about their offense this year. Second in goals for, which I mentioned, 11th in expected goals for. They have the 8th most high danger shots for this year. So this kind of backs up everything I'm saying about, guys off to incredible starts. It's not the offense that we're worried about here. It's the defense. And that's exactly what Willie Nylander said a couple days ago. I don't know if you guys caught that clip, but he was like, well, if we weren't scoring, I'd be a bit worried, but we're scoring, and that's the hardest thing to do. And it's like, God, Willie, like, I love how aloof he is at times, but it's like, read the room. Fans hate you guys. like fans hate you guys. Yeah. But then, okay, on the defensive side, 31st in goals against, 15th, though, in expected goals against, and 17th in high danger shots against. So what does that tell you? They're not getting solid goaltending like they were last season, and that's why I brought that up earlier off the top. All of those numbers, by the way, are worse at 5-on-5, so that's an issue. Dennis Hildeby has been their best goalie this season. That's also an issue. Joe Woll is back. We'll see where that goes. He was really good in his start against Chicago the other night, even though they took the L. Here are some shot stats to wrap it up that I found really interesting, because they're eerily similar to last year's team under Berube. All the talk this year is like, wow, the Leafs are giving up grade A chances every single game, and it's way more than last season. Well, I'm here to tell you, no, it's not. It's the exact same, which is, I think, more concerning, because that just tells you that if they don't get stellar goaltending on a nightly basis, they're pooched, and they're probably not going to win that game. So last season, 3.71 high danger shots against per game. Okay, that was 12th most in the NHL. This season, it's actually less than that. It's 3.68, 16th in the NHL. Eerily similar. So 3.71 high danger shots against per game, basically both last year and this year. It's almost identical. This season as well, they have the most low danger shots against. That's typically a good thing, because, low danger shots, your goalie's going to stop those, no big deal. Last year, they were 5th in the NHL. So again, eerily similar. Medium danger shots against last year and this year, both years, middle of the pack. So again, extremely similar. And last season, they had the 7th most high danger shots for. And this season, they have the 8th most. So even on the offensive side of the puck, like, the shots that they're taking and giving up are so similar. So it leads me to believe that the coaching system is the exact same. For whatever reason, it looks worse this year. And I think a big part of that is the goaltending has been a lot worse. Nevertheless, I think Berube should be in the hot seat, because I miss Sheldon Keefe hockey. They were a different team who had the puck more and were dangerous at both ends of the ice.
But playoffs, Chad. But playoffs.
Yeah. We'll see.
You gotta make it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
That
now
is
you
true.
got to make it.
Missing isn't an option.
No,
It's
absolutely not.
They're not gonna miss.
No, they're going to figure it out.
We'll talk in 2 weeks
do.
at American Thanksgiving when we
That's
do that
right.
episode.
Exactly. Okay, I'll be quick with this one, and had a really tough choice because I figured Case is going to take Brunette, the low-hanging fruit, and you're going to talk about Berube, which you could also say is kind of the low-hanging fruit. So I'll go with a guy who could be trending towards being on the hot seat, and that's Andre Tournier of the Utah Mammoth. You guys might be surprised at
That fruit is at the top of the tree, man. What are you doing?
Well, exactly. But I mean, that piece of fruit could be coming down pretty soon because, after a terrific start and after we were looking at Utah as, one of the best teams in the league to start the season, well, all of a sudden they're kind of middling in that Central Division. As you can see on the screen, passed by the Chicago Blackhawks. Minnesota, by the looks of it, has gotten their act together. They're just a point behind Utah. 4-5-1 in their last 10. 1 win in their last 5 games. Yes, it did come against Buffalo Sabres, but anyway, that's besides the point. And
Always.
always. And going back to his time when this group of players was in Arizona, he's been there a while, and I could see this team, let's say that they continue to struggle when this is kind of the year that they're looking to make the playoffs after taking a step last year. Do they look at doing something that Anaheim did in the offseason? Greg Cronin gets them to take a step, a 21-point improvement. Then they bring in a veteran, proven winning coach like Joel Quenneville to take them to the next level, because that is the hardest step to take, right? Going from, an 82-point team to a 95-point team or above and making the playoffs. And I just wonder, you've got an owner that is not afraid to make a big move, and I think, wants to continue to look at taking big swings. And Utah has done that so far, whether it's been with Sergachev, Peterka, the Logan Cooley contract extension, and with Tournier being with this group of players for a while, albeit only his second year in Utah, but that's only his second year in the market. This really is his 4th year with this group of players. And if they continue to kind of sputter along here, you've got a guy like Pete DeBoer out there, for example. And I just wonder if there could be a coaching change made if this team doesn't take the next step and becoming a playoff team like they expect themselves to be. But right now, kind of trending in the wrong direction. Again, it's early, it's only a tough 5-game stretch, but I wonder about this one, sort of putting Andre Tournier in Utah in the category of a guy who could find himself on the hot seat at some point if they continue to kind of sputter along here after a terrific start. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think that they, at least to start this season and after this poor run, they've fallen into that average category. And the average category in the Western Conference is a death sentence. And just ask the Minnesota Wild. So they really need something to push them over the edge here. And oftentimes a new coaching bump is the option. It really does work, and we've seen it countless times. I don't know if we're there yet. He's obviously way past the 2.3 year life cycle of a coach, but I think that he still might have some runway. Maybe they need to do what Anaheim did, but in a different way, in bringing in a veteran player and bringing in a Killorn or a Kreider or someone like that, because that seems to be what's really spurred on the Anaheim Ducks here. They had all the young guys. The young guys have gotten better, obviously, but it just seemed like once they had that veteran presence and someone to kind of push them and show them what it means to win hockey games, that's when they really have started to take it off here. So maybe Utah needs something like that. Maybe they need a new coach. I'm not sure the answer here because they are analytically painfully average.
Yeah, and like you said, that's a tough place to be in the West. I shared the betting odds, and I'll put them up again. Right now, Tournier is still in, what is it, third spot here for the Jack Adams voting for Coach of the Year. So that's what I meant, Harp, when I said that, that fruit that you're talking about is still at the top of the tree. It's not even hanging yet. And you're, trying to pick it off. But yeah, plus 700 for Coach of the Year, and Harp wants him gone, wants him out of there. But
oh,
no,
jeez.
Kidding aside, like I understand where you're coming from here. And I like the comparison to Anaheim. Like maybe you get a team as far as you can with a head coach, and then you bring in a more experienced kind of veteran guy who who knows how long his shelf life is going to be, but it'll at least get that young team sort of over the hump. And if that's the goal in Anaheim, I mean, it's certainly working so far. Early returns for the season have been really great, but I could see it happening in Utah if things continue to sputter. I think if they're average for the rest of the year and they miss the playoffs by a couple points, maybe it's an off-season discussion. But if they're average for the rest of the year, I don't see a mid-season coaching change coming up. Case, I like what you mentioned in the comparison to Anaheim, bringing in some veteran players like Kreider and Trouba. You look at this Utah Mammoth team, and they just really don't have a lot of wily vets, like guys who have been there, done that. Like, of course they have some guys who are considered veterans, like a Tanev, I guess, or like like a Nate Schmidt or a Sergachev is a good vet these days, Ian Cole. But the key and core pieces that they have are all just young guys. And I guess like Keller, you could say, is a vet now, but hasn't had any playoff experience of note. So it's, like bringing in a guy like Kreider, I think was so helpful for Anaheim. And even a guy like Trouba, like both these guys were casted away from the New York Rangers, and they have fit in perfectly in Anaheim. So I could see that being a solution here in Utah as well.
Have any of those vets that you mentioned on Utah won, like, or
Nate
been
Schmidt
on winning teams?
Kevin Stenlund, they both won with Florida.
Nate Schmidt.
True. And
but
Stenlund,
we're talking fourth line and bottom pair here. So
yeah, no,
you know
you're right.
what I'm saying?
Yeah. I know what you're saying. Yeah,
I'm saying like Schmaltz and Keller have been here. That's where they've got their veteran presence.
Yeah.
Lawson Krause as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
No, I get it.
I think maybe they're lacking in that place. But to the point of bringing in a veteran coach to kind of, push them over the edge, I think you're playing with fire with that nowadays. And it has to be the perfect fit, because you see Quenneville come in and it works for Anaheim, but then you bring in a veteran coach into New York, and they've been good the last couple games, I'll say, and it's trending upward in for the Rangers. But Mike Sullivan's Rangers have been painfully boring to watch, and it hasn't really worked out for them so far. Again, it's turning upwards now, but I just think you're playing with fire there. You got to have the perfect fit when you start bringing in a veteran kind of older style coach with, a younger team or a team that needs a push over the edge.
That is true.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Who are the guys out there right now, Harp? Like you mentioned Pete DeBoer. Who else is out there that you think could fit this team, or any of the teams that we talked about, really? Because not only, are we talking about removing a coach, but it has to be replaced by someone, and that someone isn't necessarily an internal hire. So who else is out there, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, besides DeBoer, it gets really thin. Like I don't see a guy like John Tortorella fitting a Utah Mammoth team, or will he even be interested in getting back into coaching? Like that's a good question. You know, one to look into, but DeBoer would be at the top of the list for sure.
I like DeBoer because he has had success on numerous teams now.
Yeah.
And to me, that I don't know, that seems like the right guy to bring in here. And
yeah,
I've always liked his style of coaching, so that makes sense. But yeah, you've got a lot of, I don't know, gallant like type guys out there. I just don't see that. I see that being, you know, a Rangers situation, not a Ducks situation.
Yeah, that's true. Anybody else in the hot seat? I was kind of surprised. You know, well, maybe not surprised. Maybe surprised isn't the right word, but a guy like Jim Montgomery out there potentially in the hot seat. John Hines potentially on the hot seat. Lindy
I thought
Ruff.
about John Hines for sure.
Yeah.
Lindy Ruff
struggles to start have been tough, and you know, not getting when a team goes out and spends $17 million on a player, the team has to be good. So
yeah,
that's
exactly.
Still a comically large amount of money for one player.
Yeah. You know, Jim Montgomery, I think, is pretty safe in St. Louis at this point in time. I believe it's a 4 or 5 year contract that he's on, and you can't let that affect your decision if the team is playing poorly. But you know, this team is coming off of a playoff appearance, taking Winnipeg to 7 games in the first round. I think reality has set in a little bit, and I think that they'll give Montgomery some more runway here to you know, continue to try to develop and get the most out of some of their young core players that they're counting on, and see where he can take this thing. So that's, you know, kind of what I have on him. And then with Lindy Ruff in Buffalo, he's in the last year of his deal anyway. And honestly, I don't think the owner wants to pay any more people not to work for the Buffalo Sabres. So that's where we're at there.
We were talking about a potential GM coming down and being a bench boss. How about an owner coming down and being a bench boss? I could see Pegula doing that for sure.
Oh gosh. That'll be the day I change teams.
Yeah. Oh, and here, just to wrap up on Buffalo and this episode, Harp, did you hear the Shanahan news that, you know, he was potentially in the running to go and work for the Sabres, but he needed autonomy from Pegula, and Pegula basically said, I do that. I run hockey operations. Me, Terry Pegula. I need nobody else.
Well, look, Shanahan would be great in a president of hockey ops kind of role. Look, the Leafs didn't have a lot of playoff success, but I think we can all agree that he left the Leafs in a better place as an organization than when he found it. And boy, oh boy, the Sabres could use a guy like him. I think he'd be great alongside, you know, potentially the next general manager of this team. And I think it should be Jarmo Kekalainen, who is the next GM of this team. He's already there. But it all comes down to the one guy, and that's Terry Pegula, whether or not he would do it. And I don't think he would. I don't think he believes in that sort of model, having a president. He obviously wants to have his voice heard, and which is too bad. But hey, things could always change. We'll see how the rest of the season goes. It's not off to a great start. I don't know what else to say.
Get Terry Pegula behind the bench. His seat would never be hot.
Oh goodness! All right, I think it's time to wrap up on that note. Good chatting with you guys again. Thank you to Julian McKenzie for being on our episode last week, and thank you for listening to this episode 255 of the Boys in the Booth podcast, proud partner of I Play Hockey. We will chat with you again next week. Take care.